As we all came into this church this morning, after a satisfying Thanksgiving holiday, I hope, we may have noticed that a few things were different compared to last Sunday and the preceding Sundays. For example, the vestments that we're wearing now are purple instead of the white of last Sunday and the green of the many weeks before last Sunday. The bulletin this Sunday has a nice purple hue to it instead of the plain white we use through most of the year. And finally, you notice up here at the front of the church is the Advent wreath in its rightful place at the front of the church with a candle lit as Mass begins. And so however it might come to us, the understanding breaks through all those things we're thinking about as we enter the church, that we have arrived at the first Sunday in Advent. I'll talk a little bit this morning about what Advent, this Advent, might mean for us as a congregational family this year. But first I want to talk about what I call the footprints in the sand of the church year that signal to us that Advent never really goes away, but rather is always lingering in the background of Christian worship. Now, if you ask any knowledgeable Christian what the season of Advent is about, that Christian is likely to reply, it's about preparing for the coming of the Christ child. Or it's about waiting and anticipating, waiting for something new to happen. And those are good answers to that question. But I suspect that they might not rate anything more than about a C+ in Father Chris's confirmation class, as he is such a stern taskmaster who offers no quarter for anything less than perfection. I, on the other hand, I would guide that Christian to try and think a little bit deeper about the words preparing and waiting. Because we prepare for an exam and we wait on a bus. But the waiting or anticipation and preparing during Advent is something totally different. The noted spiritualist Wendy Wright once observed in her Advent book called The Vigil that the quiet waiting and preparing during Advent is much like the process of waiting and preparing during pregnancy. One does not simply count off 9 months like 9 minutes waiting for a bus, but rather one lives through the 9 months participating in the waiting and participating in the preparation of what will be new life. We know, I hope, that the preparing and the anticipation that we do in Advent is really about preparing for the two comings of Christ. The first coming of Christ we seem most familiar with is the one of coming in silence and in poverty and in total weakness as a baby born to the Virgin Mary. But the second coming, the eschatological coming of Christ at the end times, is a coming in all power, in all glory, to redeem all things, and to reconcile all things into the kingdom of God for all times. In the intense celebration and preparation of Advent, we're called to prepare and wait in two The first is the powerful use of ritual. Ritual is that thing that we do over and over, the same every year. Purple vestments, Advent wreaths, Advent hymns. In our own home, in the Mueller household, every year we have an Advent wreath, and we light the candles on Sunday night in darkness, and we say a prayer. We also set up a nativity scene at the beginning of Advent, but the nativity scene only has the animals and the shepherd in it. The other characters, Mary, Joseph, and of course the baby Jesus, are located far off in the house elsewhere. And during the season of Advent, they slowly make their way through the house to appear in the nativity scene on Christmas Eve. The purpose of all these kinds of rituals is to stir up memories and yearnings in us. They help to connect our present reality to all the truths of the past. And they make those truths of the past both available and accessible to us today. And the second powerful tool of Advent is the invitation to believe. By belief, we don't mean just intellectual agreement or an intellectual consent, but rather to believe something in the religious sense is to let it come inside of you, deep inside of you, to make you different. And so to believe something such as the two comings of Christ is to allow that belief to transform our lives. Now, Advent may seem to sneak up on us at the end of November, like this year, or in early December. But in fact, there are road signs, or as I say, footprints in the sand, along the way to Advent, all during the church year. In fact, this journey to Advent starts way back on March 25th. With the Annunciation to Mary by the angel Gabriel that she would conceive a child to be born the Son of God. Can you imagine hearing that?